Thank you. Good evening. So we're going to call to order the Salem Keizer Public School District Budget Committee for the meeting of May 21st, 2018. And the first order of business is to take attendance, and we have all Budget Committee members present, with the exception of Marty Hine and Rachel Dewey-Thorsett are both absent. Before we move into tonight's agenda, I just wanted to do a real quick, brief recap of what we've done to date and kind of where we are. So just as a quick reminder to the committee and the public, we started this public process at the end of March, had our first meeting, and then moving into April, we had the superintendent's budget message, and we also had the opportunity to provide feedback and ask questions. And then moving into April-May timeframe, we had some public meetings. We took public comment. We asked additional questions, got questions answered, and we now are at the point in the budget committee process where we're at the last week of the process, and so we're going to be moving from the really the big picture question and answer down to kind of the level of any outstanding questions that we feel that we can get answered here, but also discussions and then deliberations. And tonight we're also going to take public comment again. We'll see what what we have lined up a little bit later, but before we go into that, we are going to have some follow-up questions and answers from the superintendent, and then also the superintendent is going to give us the updated budget, proposed budget document, and that is the binder that you have at your desk. So these are replacing the ones that we had last week. The superintendent talked last week about additional revenues, and so this document contains that information. So we'll turn it over to the superintendent for a discussion about follow-up questions.
All right, and I'll just say on your binders, you can decide at the end of this whether you want to keep your first binder for a little bit, if it's helpful to look for the comparisons. If you don't, Alice will take it at the end, totally, whatever is your preference. So the first document you have in front of you is the questions that came forward. And so the first question, and I'll just walk through them quickly, around the scattergram was not one that you'd move forward, but Director Keizer pulled those for us. And so we did not provide you an updated scattergram, but he did obtain one from October 1st, so we included that in your information. So that's in the back, and that's the basically the FTE for licensed staff that's on each place on the salary schedule. The next question was around licensed teachers and how many are in non-teaching positions. And in the center is the chart, but also important is the description of what's included in each of those categories. So for example, non-teaching positions are things like instructional mentors, counselors, librarians, behavior specialists. And then the final one, which is, oh, I'm sorry. I thought, it's okay. Did everyone find their, I should have looked.
So in your folder, there's also a folder at your desk. The manila folder has,
There we go.
it has the supplemental questions
Sorry about
and the
that,
answers.
Okay, the one that's the trickiest one is the district one. And so there's a description down there. There is just a lot of variance about which are classified in the district position. So we've tried our best to describe those there and then show you the percentage. And the question was, what is across the district, what percentage of our licensed teachers assigned to licensed positions are in non-teaching positions? And then break it down by elementary, middle, and high. So there's that. The next questions are around staff turnover. And we put the total for 15-16, 16-17, and 17-18. And these are across all funding sources, so including our title federal programs, grants. And 17-18 is not a final number yet because it is not the end of the year yet, and we'll have a few more coming in. The next one is around the cost of recruitment. And basically, we took what we know as hard and direct costs. We didn't make any assumptions about the time and energy that other people outside of the recruitment department put into the recruiting. So they are estimated costs. And you'll notice that one of the costs is pathway programs, and those are described down in the second bullet. And those are basically our grow your own programs. So from some of our classified positions and even down to our high school students who are moving into college career programs for education. Then we get to the average cost, and it was just a math problem. There's probably more, it probably actually costs more than this, but these are the direct costs. And then the next question were hard to fill positions. Two of those hard to fill positions, special education and bilingual, those both that's one of the reasons we have the pathway programs to really boost our ability to recruit into those positions. And then under F, there is no direct additional cost other than in our grow your own programs. And then the last one is around retention. And we're highlighting there the mentor program and basically how it's funded. Then we also have some support for struggling teachers through Envoy, Healthy Classrooms, and I had not heard of Cat in the Doghouse, but we put some Title II money to that. And then one of our really important connections is with our university partners, and as we have our clinical teachers prepared as they come into our schools. So that's been a highlight for us. That is the basic answers to the questions that you gave us last week, and move forward.
Paul?
The numbers that you pulled on the first one to question 78, are those current or are those also from October?
Current. This is so the district one. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, I believe he pulled these from current. Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to be sure.
All right, I'm going to move into the next part then. And the best place for you to go in your new binder is if you could go to page 13. And I actually have pulled 13 out of my binder because I'm going to walk you through it and put you to some other pages. So that might be a helpful way to follow along. And it's a letter dated to May 21st to the Budget Committee. So two factors have caused us to bring in a large new binder, some additional revenue projections, and the passage of the bond. So yay to the passage of the bond. It actually, with the bond passing, this puts us over a $1 billion budget that you'll be approving and passing on to the board. No pressure. No pressure. Yeah. Anyway, so I want to walk you through, first of all, the revenue increases in the general fund. So if you turn to page 52 in your book, and what I want to remind you is this is not going to be a direct comparison, because if you have to keep in mind we're replacing your binder. So you won't be able to see the increase, so that's why we've highlighted it in the letter. So if you look under 3100 at almost the top of page 52, the state school fund grant without transportation, this $322 million and plus dollars is actually a 1.4 almost $1.5 million increase because of an increase that was given to us in our state school fund estimate. So that's our first increased revenue that we're showing in this book. If you are somebody who likes to compare, you could go back to the other book and you could see that we've actually increased the revenue by 1.4. The next thing we're tracking is what we call our ending fund balance, which shows up in the budget book in terms of a beginning fund balance. So as we get closer to the end, we begin tracking those revenues, or those our revenue and expenditures. And what you're seeing on 5400 on the same page, and 5400 it says beginning fund balance at 46 million. That's a $5 million increase in our beginning fund balance in this version of the document. So the next thing I'm going to walk you through is how we're expending these, and I'm going to walk through and show you just a couple where they are in the book, and then I'll say, do you want me to walk through everyone line by line? But the first addition is an increase to nurses, and you've heard about the concerns around nursing. This increase of nursing would put us at a 1 to 2,200 ratio of new students to nurses, so still not where we'd want to be, but gets us closer. What this would do is get us to 1 nurse in every high school, which frees up the other nursing resources to do the work in the elementary and middle schools. If you look on page 71, and we tried to put the page numbers on your document as well, under 2130 health services, regular classified employees, that 18.88 is actually a 2 FTE increase from the other binder. So it doesn't show that it's 2 here, but that's where you'll see it. And then the other thing we've added is school-based health assistants at the elementary schools. And this category is going to be in both regular classified salary, and then on the following page, so there's a stated increase of regular classified and also in the associated payroll costs in the next page. We do not believe that this will get us through every elementary school, but the goal with the increased nurses then is to triage at the elementary level to see what sort of health needs are there. We estimated at about $400,000 for costs for every elementary school. This is about $237,000. So it'd be a pool-based system. Okay, next increase is in, oh, I'm sorry.
Sure. I'm sorry, Paul.
Are you taking questions now?
If it relates to this, yes.
It does. As I look at the FTE for 2017-18, it says 8.5. As I look at the FTE for 18-19, it still says 8.5. I don't see an increase.
So under the regular classified, we didn't put it in as an FTE increase because it's just in terms of a pool of dollars to add hours. So we're not stating it in FTE increases.
Okay.
Great question. Okay, all right. The next one is on page 70, and it's, let's see, 2120, counselors, 4 FTE counselors. So if you look on page 20, guidance services, the proposed budget would have had 4 less. We've put this at, increase this by 4. The question would probably be, what will you do with 4 additional counselors? And right now, we don't have an exact plan. I know they're needed in so many places, but things on our mind are drug and alcohol counseling at Roberts. Also on our mind is suicide prevention, and then also on our mind is the counselor to student teacher ratio at some of our schools. So we're going to look at those 4 FTE of counselors and see where the greatest need is. Truthfully, it could be 10. You know, we could add so many. Okay, so the next one is on page 61. And this is a fairly significant one, and I want to help you see where we did this. So I mentioned last time we were tracking some significantly higher needs in our Learning Resource Center classrooms. Those come in the form of one-on-one adult assistance. And so I mentioned that last time. It was one of those items that we, as we were building the proposed budget, we didn't have a great sense of how that need was escalating. So this is not new people. They are a temporary workforce in our schools. But the problem is the interrelationship between the general fund and our federal funds and IDEA. They're paid out of both, and our federal funds aren't growing, but our need is growing. So this is putting those, which we won't see more bodies because there's already a temporary workforce that's doing a lot of this work. This is putting that $2 million into the general fund. And so you'll see on page 61, under 1250, less restricted programs for students with disabilities. 309 is an increase of 34.38 FTE of adult assistance.
Where's that?
I don't know, I don't see it.
Where's that again?
I'm sorry, 61 all the way down at the bottom.
Try again.
Try again, let me look.
That's what it is, right here.
309 point,
Okay, gotcha.
I see no 309.
the very bottom line,
Oh, there
all,
we go.
total, all the way down. It's in the classified,
Okay.
168, right above it.
Okay.
The next addition is around MAT training, which is our training to work with students that are escalating, and it's in various parts within the budget, so I've not called that out specifically, but it's definitely, it's professional development in the Office of Behavioral Learning. All right, so do you want me to keep going through page by page? Is that helpful? Okay, I'm happy to do it. Next is on page 53. And let's see, behavior cadre is an increase in, I might have to get a little help with this one. I did not mark this one out. I believe it's in the classified under 1111 and 112 classified. There's an increase there of 3.75 FTE for the embedded cadre. Our work with the embedded cadre is actually, or with behavior cadre, is actually to embed them in our schools, to stay in our schools as we're having behaviors that are escalating. All right, the next one is our licensed reserve FTE. We know that class size is on our mind, and so we have placed an additional 11.5, same page, right above it on 1111, regular license. There's an addition of 11.5 FTE to licensed classroom teachers. We call it reserve FTE because we won't put it into the formula with our schools, but instead we'll look at the emerging needs within our schools, and we'll begin some of that work before school starts. All right, the next one, slow me down if I get going too quickly, is under charter school payments. It's on page 63. And it is 1280. And I'm looking under the 1280. Wondering if it's on, oh, there it is. I'm sorry, it's on page 64. And 360 on the next page is about 5 or 6 down where it says charter school payments. When our state school fund increases, our payments to charter schools increases. This is an automatic increase to our charter schools. All right, the next,
Excuse me.
yes.
Can you explain that just a little bit more? I was under the impression that the state fund payments are per student. So unless there are more students in the charter school, why would the payments automatically increase just because our revenue from the state increased?
I'll let Mike or Sarah answer that one.
So the dollars per student go up. So when we received the additional 1.4, almost 1.5 million, we got more per student.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
All right, next is on page 97, and there's a number of transfers. The first one is transfer to the risk management fund. We are self-insured up to a certain amount, and we've had a couple things that have drawn down the risk management fund. So you'll see a transfer of $600,000 from the general fund to the risk management fund. The next one finishes out the math adoption. So under transfer to asset replacement fund instructional materials, which is one above it or a couple above it, this is an add of another $1 million. So that was a 3.5, now it's a 4.5 add. And then up above that is additional transfer to asset replacement for buses. We've talked about that in the infrastructure report. This is an additional $500,000 to buses into the asset replacement fund. And so it makes that transfer $820,000. And let's see, 95. There is a, let's see, bond construction manager that's removed from the general fund, 4110, facilities acquisition and construction. We removed, so you'll see nothing in that proposed column.
Where's that again?
Right under, on page 95, 4110, facilities acquisition and construction. You'll notice there isn't anything in the proposed column. So last book time, there would have been 105,001 FTE there.
Wait, why did we take it out?
Because it'll be in the bond fund now.
Oh, got it.
Because we'll move it in since the bond passed. And then on page 69, I know you wonder why I went in this order, but it made sense at the time.
Yeah.
You'll see that we've increased the security specialist position by 2 FTE, and it's under 2110 attendance and social workers. It's a classified position. We've added 2, and then we've removed some of the dollars from a contracted service. So we have decided that more and more, when we can hire our own security specialists and pay less in contracted services, we're getting a better security for our schools. So this is a realignment of dollars to put it into permanent FTE. All right, so on the back page of this just really outlines where things came from, where they went to. So the first is the asset replacement fund. This is the addition, so there's an additional 1.5 going to asset replacement, some on instructional materials, some for buses. It's just a different way of looking at the numbers. In the proposed budget, there was a transfer from PERS of $4.5 million. We have taken that out. We put it there as a placeholder depending on whether the bond passed or not. So it would have had to be a decision whether the bond passed or not at this point in time. The debt service fund, and I'm going to take you to that. The debt service fund is on page 188. This back page shows you that we increased the revenue by 23.5 million. The first line under resources, taxes to be levied, outstanding bond issues, it's at $54.4 million. In the 424 version, it was at 23 million. So this is where you begin to see the effects of passing the bond, because we will have to go out and levy additional taxes to the voters. And then the next one is, that's important to pay attention to, is the 2018 bond capital construction or projects fund. And this is starting on page 193. And for the board especially, this is going to feel a little bit out of order because you've not made any final decisions about the amount of dollars you're going to go out for when you do the first letting of the bonds. You haven't had any presentations, but what the budget has tried to capture is, here is a projected revenue, projected expenditures for the budget committee, and then in the coming months, the board will get more detail around both of those. Important is that this gives us the limit of what we can spend, and we feel like this gives us a good start for the first year of the bond projects. Also have to remember, we're going to be bridging a couple years, so we'll be going out and to borrow money this summer as we begin expending, and then next summer starts big construction season, lots of expenditures. That will bridge to budget years. So we've tried to develop a bond capital projects fund that gives us enough spending authority to get to June 30th of next year and to accept the revenue in. We believe this will do it in the coming weeks. If we needed a change to this, we can always do that with the board between the time you as a budget committee approve the budget and the board adopts the budget. Or we can come back later for supplemental budget. So that's the overview of the changes with some what we think are important additions that will support students in our schools. We also believe that these are some of the things that we've heard and knew, because they were on the list to begin with, of the right supports and resources for students. So with that, I'll stop for questions. Forever. Yeah, I'll stop forever. Yeah, I'll stop forever.
Kathleen?
Christy, going back to the school-based health assistants, you said this increase does not allow to having an assistant in every elementary school. Can you give me more detail on that? How many schools will not? How did you make that decision as to who's not?
We put it in as a dollar decision initially, and it will depend on a lot of things. But the way we'll determine is we will determine by looking at what are the supports in the office already, depending on how many people are in that front office already, what's the enrollment of the school, and what is the medical needs of the students in that school. If there are medical needs that require a nurse to come and give other injections, is that a high need as a different school over here that might only have 2 people in the front office? So it was a dollars discussion, and then we'll put it into the formula to see based on student need. The other part it will depend on is if it's an hour and a half, if it's just a person coming in for an hour and a half a day and that's it, those dollars go a lot further than if it's somebody in the building that you can give an extra hour and a half to and it triggers health insurance. And that's why we've put it in both the salary range and the benefits and associated payroll costs. And that one's just really difficult to estimate until we hire.
So that's what you meant when you mentioned that it would go into a pool, so, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And sorry, so one more question on this. So with the 2 that we're bringing on, hopefully, then every single high school will have a full-time nurse.
Every single comprehensive high school, yes.
Comprehensive, okay. Sorry.
There's some other high school programs.
Okay,
So
Sure.
CTEC, but
Sure.
every single comprehensive high school.
okay. So then how many nurses do we have outside of that then, what about middle schools? Are they, sorry for all the questions.
No, it's just,
And then are they floating to just kind of, I mean, I understand the idea of floating and where the highest needs are and all of that, but I'm just wondering what kind of What kind of staff are we looking at for that?
We have, the proposed budget has 18.8 nursing FTE. And currently, because in the, let's see, before tonight, this school year, I think we had 14. So this is increasing that workforce by 4. And the 14 were spread out among all schools. We also have a nurses helpline that is staffed throughout the school day, so a school office person or person in a building could call and ask questions. So it's gone from 14 to 18. I don't have the breakdown of exactly what that will look like for every school, but they try to triage them based on feeder systems. And so easier to have your FTE spread out if you're close
Right.
than if you have to travel across town, and also by acuity of needs.
Okay, thanks.
And we'll obviously have time for questions later if we need clarification, but we're going to go ahead and move into the public comment portion of tonight. Oh, thank you. Okay, so we have 4 individuals signed up, and just as a reminder, I will call your name. Please come up and introduce yourself and just state for the record your address. And you'll have 3 minutes to address the Budget Committee. We're going to start with Mark Atkinson.
Budget Chair Lassie, Vice Chair Herrera Lopez, Superintendent Perry, members of the Budget Committee. My name is Mark Atkinson. I reside at 2262 Banyonwood Avenue Northwest. And tonight I'm here to speak to you as a parent, as a school employee, and a member of the community about the proposed budget. In 1985, I got a BS in mathematics. In 1997, I got an advanced degree in mathematics. I spent 30 years teaching personal finance, economics, and mathematics. So I enjoy the numbers of the budget. If you look at your certified scattergram, I'm one of the 191.37 at the bottom of the right column. I'm expensive, and according to the scattergram, I work 8 hours a day. So on Saturday, when I spend 8 hours tutoring seniors for free, I'm not sure if that counted. Or Sunday, when I was grading papers for seniors, trying to get the F-lift so I can join in the all-student graduate mission. I come to this board and this committee asking for support in finding ways to support teacher voice and reduce teacher workload. An example, Ed Excellence and data teams at the elementary school, $225,000. If we took that money, divided it by the 47 elementary schools, it'd be approximately $5,000 per elementary school to support teachers in doing their job and doing the data without outside input. Avid, I love Avid. They use best practice, they package it, relabel it, and sell it. We spend $700,000 in administrative costs, not counting the 3,100 and some students in the program, 25 students per class, 125 some class periods, 20 teachers full-time for the district, times $125,000 for salary and associated payroll costs. That's about $2.5 million in payroll for Avid. Is that the best choice for our students? I'll be here tomorrow and the next night, and I thank you for your time, and I hope that as you vote yes, you'll think about the many hours that this budget is going to require teachers to volunteer every week. For me, it's an average of 20 hours a week, and I hope that you would also consider volunteering that many hours in your local school. Thank you.
Okay, so next up, we have Mindy Merritt.
Good evening. Budget Chair Blassie, Vice Chair Herrera Lopez, Superintendent Perry, and members of the Budget Committee. My name is Mindy Merritt, and I reside at 2381 Teal Drive, Southeast Salem. Tonight, I'm here to speak to you as the president of SKEA, and I'm here to speak to you about the budget. As the association president, SKEA recognizes that once again, we are entering a time in public education in which the needs of our students and our communities far outweigh the current resources and systems that our district and our schools have the ability to fund. And we've addressed this, and we recognize that this is a national and a state issue, and it's something that we all come together to address. And I have to admit that I'm excited to hear what you're already able to do with this renewed budget and this revision, and I celebrate that, and I'm excited that the bond passed. The following feedback that I'm giving tonight is kind of the direction, as we've had members that have been sharing multiple evenings in these public hearings of what are some of the beliefs that SKEA has been sharing of our hopes and dreams. One, we definitely have been supportive of our district mentors. It's important to us that we retain our early career educators. They make a difference in retaining our early career educators. Two, the investment in the behavioral learning, the Office of Behavioral Learning. Good work is being done with the behavioral cadre, with the social emotional learning. It's well thought out. It's making a difference. I definitely want to encourage that. The work and encouragement for a full-time drug and alcohol counselor at each of the comprehensive high schools, and as well as at Roberts. I can't say enough about that. We are losing our high school students. We have students in need, K through 12, and as much as we can address those needs, there's a need for it. And I desperately encourage us, if we can find the help and support to do that. As I spoke last week, additional funding to pay AVID teachers for their time outside of their contract day. I encourage that. Our teachers are dedicated, our students deserve and are definitely exceeding with the AVID work. I encourage that. Definitely looking at the stability for staffing and resources at the elementary, middle, and high school. We have a lot of resources and work that's being done with our staff. Our students are worth it. We have great work that's being done within our district, and you're all faced with a big decision and limited resources, and I respect each and every one of you as you unpack this big work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. Sorry. So next up, we have Courtney, Glennon. Sorry, Courtney.
Budget Chair Blassie, Vice Chair Herrera Lopez, Superintendent Perry, and members of the Budget Committee. My name is Courtney Glennon, and I reside at 7862 St. Charles Street, Northeast Keizer. I'm here to speak to you as a classroom teacher about additional FTE for behavior specialists. First, I'd like to thank you for the current efforts that have been made to address the significant increase of behaviors found in our schools. The embedded cadre, programs that collaborate with outside mental health organizations, half-time behavior specialists, and ongoing work done by David Fender and his department are recognized and deeply appreciated. However, it's still not enough. I understand work in the area of behavioral learning will continue with the expansion of embedded cadre, but I'm here tonight to ask that this work continue and expand at a greater rate with the increase of FTE for behavior specialists. As teachers, we've seen the demands placed on us as continue to increase. You've heard many of us speak, class sizes, meetings, assessments. I could go on and on, but time is short. When students come to class with significant trauma or other conditions that result in significant disruptive behavior, the task of educating our class with all of those demands becomes second or third to managing aggressive and disruptive behavior, keeping other students in the class feeling safe, and working hard to continue to provide an environment conducive to learning. My school has had a behavior specialist half-time, and it has been a tremendous help. Our behavior specialist has helped by following up with behaviors, talking children through what to do next, removing students who are disrupting learning until they have calmed down and are able to come back. She has spent numerous hours contacting parents. It's an incredible asset. I do not have my time in my day to do all of these things and perform my regular responsibilities. Having a part-time behavior specialist comes with a number of challenges. This is not a subbable position. Our building specialist is only in the building from 11 to 3. When you add in meetings or trainings held outside of the building, this leaves those of us relying on her support for our most challenging students, who don't limit their behaviors to 11 to 3, scrambling when they're out of the building. Some issues are unable to be addressed until the following day. If the incident is on a Friday, resolve doesn't come until Monday. When looking to intervene with students' behaviors, a delay in this process is not as effective 3 days later. Time for teachers to consult with our specialist are minimal as well. She's not at school before school or after school when I have time to meet with her. Some schools have elected to use their title funds to make the behavior specialist a full-time position because their building has a need. Not all schools have this title money, even though we have a need. Tonight, I ask you to consider adding full-time behavior specialists for all elementary schools to the budget for the upcoming school year. If you are not able to add a full-time specialist at each elementary school, I would like you to consider adding some additional FTE for the position, which can then be allocated based on enrollment and/or intensity of behavioral needs, similar to the embedded cadre that has been allocated based on need this year. Thank you.
Thank you. And last up, is it? Marilyn, sorry. Marilyn Ellis. Thank you.
Good evening, Budget Chair Blasey, Vice Chair Hilario Lopez, Superintendent Perry, and members of the Budget Committee. My name is Marilyn Ellis. I reside at 6705 Continental Circle Southeast here in Salem. Tonight I'm here to speak with you about allocation of resources in the district's budget. Never an easy topic. Some of you, especially those of you who are parents, might be familiar with a Dr. Seuss book called The Lorax. His most famous lines are, "I am the Lorax, I speak for the trees." And he speaks for the trees because they're endangered and unable to speak for themselves. I'm not the Lorax, but I am here to speak for our teachers and, even more importantly, for our students, because many of them are endangered and they often are unable to speak for themselves. My concern specifically has to do with class size. In my role as a district instructional mentor, I spend time in every one of our comprehensive high schools in multiple classes every week, and I see the class loads that our teachers are carrying. In my 17 years of teaching at North Salem High School, I had one section that ever exceeded the number of 40, and it was at 41. This year, more than half of the teachers on my caseload had sections over 40, and some of them had multiple sections over 40. As a teacher at the time having my large class, I was a veteran, and I found it challenging. I found it difficult to get to know the students. I found it difficult to manage the workload, and I really found it difficult to help those who were least academically successful. I didn't do a very good job, and now we're asking our beginning teachers to do this almost across the board. So my request is to consider class size as part of a consideration in making these very difficult decisions. The superintendent talked about some changes or additions and mentioned the reserve FTE, which is a wonderful help. It's a Band-Aid, it's not a true solution, and it often functions much like this. The school year starts, we have a bubble of extra enrollment that occurs at a particular school, so new sections are added, but well after the school year has begun. So for those who are more fragile, it's a delicate situation trying to find students a new fit in a new class with a new teacher. We do protect some of our classes, and I want that to be recognized as well. In Avid, for example, we have 3,391 students in 129 sections, which leads to a class average, and this was data presented 2 weeks ago, of 26.3. That's significantly lower than the average across the board. This occurs for a number of reasons, in part because it's capped, and in part because if students are unsuccessful, they are put on probation and ultimately potentially removed from the program. I would ask that we have greater equity in consideration of allocation of FTE across the board. I'm seeing too many beginning teachers struggle with these significant class sizes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we are at the portion of our meeting where we're going to open it up for Budget Committee members, comments, discussion, deliberations, and proposals for changes. But before we go into that, we're actually going to go over the process that we had outlined the first night, and you do have a copy of this, so I'd ask that you take a look at this. So this is the process for changing the superintendent's proposed budget. And so the process is, one, members of the committee have the opportunity to identify changes they would like to be considered. If a change is identified that would increase the budget, the committee member proposing the change needs to be prepared to identify an area of reduction to offset that increase. And then each proposed change will be recorded on an initial list. And so if we do have proposed changes, we'll take those down, we'll list them out. We're not going to move into deliberations or voting on each one as they come up. We're going to list them. And then beginning with the first proposed change, the committee member who recommended the change will give a brief 1 or 2 minute explanation of why they believe the change should be made. After the explanation, other members will be asked by a show of hands if they would like that proposed change to remain on the list for further consideration. And then, as we discussed, 6 members, 5 in addition to the person making the recommendation, must concur in order for the proposed change to remain on the list for further consideration. And then we'll use Robert's Rule of Order in considering each of the remaining proposed changes to the list. And the number of votes required to pass a motion is 8 committee members, so that will be for a final decision on a proposed change. And then if the Budget Committee makes changes to the superintendent's proposed budget, additional staff work may be required to modify the document in whole, and an opportunity for additional public comment may be necessary. So we just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page. And so we'll open it up now to, and this will be for Budget Committee members to discuss, deliberate, propose, whatever you'd like to do.
Madam Chair, just a question.
Yes.
That'd be the same now for questions and requests for information, right?
Well, like we said earlier, we're kind of moved beyond this week, requesting additional information. So that was the process.
Right,
the last,
yeah,
yes.
it's 6. It's
Yes.
6 in that instance
Right.
too, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Anybody want to kick us off? Okay. Jesse, go ahead.
Okay, so I have one. As a member of the school board and the budget committee, I believe it is our duty to make recommendations for a well-balanced budget. It's our duty to our community as well as the taxpayers and our students to ensure that we're providing the best education possible. As a student and as an older brother to many, I believe it is our duty to protect and take care of our students and teachers. From speaking with many teachers that I have found, many view Ed Excellence as both ineffective and some refer to it as a waste of time. For these services, we pay over $350,000 for a program that is not viewed as cost-effective by a majority of our district's bottom line. Now, understand that our administration views this as important, and we also view having data as important. But I also believe that taking care of our teachers is important, as well as maintaining something that is cost-effective. Now, there have got to be ways to where we can still collect data and still be able to track that without going to an outside company that's providing, that we're paying $350,000 for. As well as, we can also spend that money towards compensating avid teachers for their time and their hard work. And we could also spend some of the money towards added on to the school-based health assistants, of which we've had many testimonies saying that we desperately need. So because of the reasons that I have stated, I move that the Budget Committee recommends to the district to reallocate $300,000 from the Ed Excellence and use that money to both compensate our avid teachers for their time and hard work, as well as increase the budget for the school-based health assistants.
Thank you. So just to clarify, part of the process was if you recommend a reduction in one area, and it is a component of the budget, it's a component of the process, what is your recommendation for filling that gap? And I think it might be helpful to understand
Sure.
hold on. So where in the process, just remind us where that fits into the overall process.
Okay, sure. So we spend $350,000 to an outside company, a for-profit outside company, to collect data for us, analyze it, and then and we go through the data team's process. Now with teachers, they only have so many hours a day to where they get to talk to each other and communicate with each other about how they can better help their students, which that's what we're here for as the students. So if our teachers are feeling as if they don't have the time, they don't have enough time to actually communicate, and they feel like they're just mulling over data, which is what I've received a lot of feedback from, I view that as not an effective use of our resources. I believe that our teachers should have enough time to speak with each other and learn from each other about what best helps our students, not what best helps our administrators look at data. And so I do think data is important. However, I believe that we can cut back on the amount of data that we collect it not as frequently and not every week, and instead spend that resources on what we're supposed to be spending on, which is our students and our teachers. That's the whole reason that we're here. And so that's why I left of the budget of $350,000 that we spend on Ed Excellence, we could spend $50,000 of it there, still collect some data throughout the year, doing internal methods. I'm not the education professional. That's not my job to do that. But if you guys could find a way to do that, that would be great. And then the additional $300,000 that I'm proposing we move, we could add that to, and I'm not sure on the allocation of how much goes to what, but we could compensate our avid teachers, our teachers who participate in avid and volunteer for their time.
Thank you. Thanks. So you'd already gone over that, so I'll just.
Thanks.
Okay, so per our process, you're proposing a change. So we'll go through the process of giving the initial kind of thumbs up, thumbs down for this. And I would say definitely before, as we put these up on the board, at some point we'll have a discussion. We'll have the ability for other board members to discuss your proposal. But for now, we'll start with just a general thumbs up, yes or no, to the proposed reduction to Ed Excellence of $300,000. So I'm going to, go ahead.
Just a
So
clarification.
hold on, we're
Yeah.
not quite there yet.
I thought we were gonna just put it on a list and then,
Yeah, but we have to, in order to even get it on the list, we have to have six.
there were other people that had come.
Yep, 6. Can we get a clarification on the dollars, though, Madam Chair? According to the answers, only 15,000 of that's covered by the general fund, and the rest is covered by title grants.
Correct.
So the proposal would be trying to reallocate funds that aren't under the purview of this budget committee, except for the 15,000, if I'm correct?
Are those, sorry.
So hold on. So we're going to go ahead, I guess, at this point, before we do the thumbs up and thumbs down, ask questions. I think is that okay with everyone to get clarification?
Sure. Can those title grants be allocated anywhere else? Or are those title grants only allowed to be spent on Ed Excellence?
So, you want me to jump in?
Yes, please.
Okay, so there is, I think, only 15,000 in the general fund, back from that original answer. Each of the schools actually develops a title plan, and so they choose how to spend their title funds, and we have some district title funds that we put. Originally, the Oregon Department of Education actually mandated that the data team's work was part of our focus school work because we had 5 of the lowest performing schools in the state. And so that's where the work with Ed Excellence came from. And it's both Title I and Title II. I do not believe the school-based health assistance would fall under that at all. To be able to use from the title funds. And I'm not sure about extra earnings for salaries.
Paul?
But it's my understanding that the mentor program is Title II, and it could be used there.
That is correct.
Okay. Do we have additional questions, or Kathy? Go ahead.
I do. I find it difficult to vote for both things at once. I mean, I might think the idea that our board member has is good. I might not agree with where it's coming from. The swap from it is, what do we do to solve that? We just flat vote it down and lose the idea, or?
Well, I think if we're going to make a proposal to reduce a program by that much, one, we would need to know why, and then where would those dollars be redirected to? So, Marcia?
That's not the answer.
How long has Ed Excellence been in operation? And have we seen any improvements because of it?
I think the bigger question is that's the right question. What does Ed Excellence do for us? So there are, they do on-site coaching for our schools around the data team process. They aren't a data collection agency at all. They're like coaches of teaching and learning and of the data team process. So the schools that have had the most coaching from Ed Excellence are Auburn, Four Corners, Grant, Sweigel, Highland, Bush, Chavez, Richmond, Kennedy, and Keizer. Those are the ones that have had the most coaching from Ed Excellence. And all of those schools are showing really significant growth in their students as a result of the data team process that has been coached by Ed Excellence. We have worked, because of the work in our low-performing elementary schools that was required by ODE, we have really had an interest from other schools in the Ed Excellence work. So they have been helpful in leading our teacher teams with our ELD units. They've done on-site coaching for us. They're a teacher-based, out of teaching, but teachers-based company. And it's one of our strategies for improvement.
Follow up?
Yes.
So they're coaching teachers, right?
Yeah, in the data teams, yep.
Right, in the data teams, but the teachers are the ones collecting the data.
Correct.
Correct?
Yep.
Okay, I'm trying to understand.
Can I say one thing? So yeah, one of the issues that I heard from many teachers when I was talking to them, and in fact, I urge you all to actually go speak with actual teachers about their thoughts on data teams. Many teachers that I talked to felt it was their perception that a lot of the time that they spent so much time collecting data and keeping track of data and numbers that they didn't have as much time to talk to each other about things that they felt were more important. So they felt they were so busy data collecting that they couldn't talk to each other about what was actually working in each other's classrooms.
So you do raise a good point about talking to teachers, and I know this has come up before, and so I've talked to teachers, and I think there are some differing of opinions, and I guess a question I would have for you especially is you're proposing reducing a significant element of this, the system is, I guess, how many teachers have you spoken to, and like, what is the swath of, how many teachers? Because I've talked to teachers and I've heard, just a minute, so I
just have a point of order.
Pardon?
As the chair, are you debating? Under Robert's rules, the chair doesn't debate, so I was just trying to understand your role.
Okay, that's a good point, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Levy?
Marcia, actually.
I just wanted to ask if what Paul mentioned, the Title II, is used at the schools you mentioned that are using the current edX.
Point of order, Title II was not in the motion,
No, it's just information.
but we're discussing the motion before the body.
Okay.
Under Robert's rules, Title II was not part of the original motion.
Okay.
So just to clarify, we're not at we're still just kind of information gathering because you've proposed something. And so we're not at the point of voting, up or down. We're voting to put it on a list to be considered. So we're not at Robert's rules yet, but we'll try to, but I think if members of the Budget Committee have the ability to discuss, I think that, each of the committee members should have that opportunity, so go ahead.
Can I change my motion to include the funding from Ed Excellence as well as the Title II dollars allocated towards Ed Excellence to be moved? And then everything else remains the same. So now it is included. I can repeat the whole thing if you want. I just felt that would be quicker.
Yes, please repeat what the
Sure.
motion is.
Okay. So because of the reasons I have stated, I move that the Budget Committee recommends to the district to reallocate $300,000 of both cash or budget money as well as Title II dollars that are spent towards that, and move that money to compensate our avid teachers for their hard time in work and towards the mentorship program for teachers.
Okay.
Student-based help
Thank you.
assistance.
Mark,
Can I list an or for those in a motion?
Mark, go ahead.
So I think we're way outside of our process here. As I read the process that we said we were going to go through, we were going to identify a series of motions, not take any vote until we actually had a list, and then go through the list one at a time to see if things stayed on the list, and then go into Robert's rules to actually debate. We're way into debate. I'd like to see what the full list of proposed changes are before I even make a decision about whether any one should stay on the list.
Okay.
So should we have Mike write, see if there's any others?
Yeah, so because we do still, again, part of the process was just to get it onto the list, we take a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
That's not my read of number one
Am I
and two
missing?
on your process.
And that's why I asked my question previously, because I had the same reading. We were just gonna list things and then go back to it.
So let's get things listed first and then see whether they.
Right, so if we focus on the initial list, this would just be if you have an idea.
Okay.
So we're not calling it a motion, right? If you have a desire to make a change to the budget, then we'll get them up on the whiteboard. And then, as Mark said, whether you do it tonight or tomorrow, then you do the 6 votes, keeps it on the list for further consideration, and then from that list, we'll go down one by one with Robert's Rules of Order, which would be the full motion.
Okay.
And it would take 8 to make the change.
Okay.
And just for clarification purposes, not to muddy the water on this particular change, I'll put it up there to honor the process, but I think we may have some significant issues with reallocating title money to do the things that were suggested. So whatever the change is, may require more staff work to make sure that we stay within the parameters of the grants, for instance.
Okay, so we have our first proposed change. We'll add to the list, or start the list.
Directions right now.
I'm just going to start over.
So on the original list, I don't care really, take a time once we get the list done.
Kathy?
Is it possible, relating back to my question again, to separate what we want to add and what we want to subtract, so those two are separate on that list? Because then it's possible to identify and weigh the measures as far as what it's worth to us and whether we agree with the idea at all.
So right now we have listed reallocate, and I think Jesse provided some specifics on his proposal.
Right, I want those separated if
Okay.
possible.
Oh, yeah, do we have to have specifics as to where it goes?
Yes.
We do?
Yes.
Okay. So we would say to avid teachers for their time and hard work, as well as the mentorship program for teachers.
You don't like his idea, but you don't want it to go to this.
So, just for clarification purposes, we're talking about, though, reallocating from Ed Excellence, the current contract, which we'd have to take a look at the contract language to make sure that we've got an out there, to additional compensation for teachers, primarily in the areas of avid and mentors? Okay, great.
Other proposals? Proposed changes? So we have a list of one?
So far.
Other discussion in general? Chuck?
I just wanted to compliment staff and the superintendent. I think with the testimony that we've heard, public testimony, the changes for that $6.5 million is well spent. I think you hit a lot of the needs that we heard were being voiced through public testimony, so nice job.
I would agree. Okay. Well, I guess we're not seeing other proposed changes, so we have a list. I guess I have a clarification question, though. I mean, we can, our process, asks us to have a presentation from the proposer, which you've done, and then we vote whether or not to keep it on the list. Change to remain on the list for further consideration. But I think we have some questions about whether or not we can technically do this based on the contract. So I don't know how that plays in. So Mark?
So I guess this is a process question. We are scheduled for more public comment tomorrow night.
Right.
So is it appropriate for us, this may not be the last proposed modification. So would it be appropriate for us to know that this is on the list, be done for tonight, come back tomorrow, hear public comment, see if there's anything else that gets added to the list? Because I really don't want to do anything unless I know that it's the final list, and there's the possibility that things could be added to the list tomorrow night.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good point. We are scheduled for public comment tomorrow, so that's an excellent point, so, yeah.
When we have the whole list, as Mark identified, it gives us a chance to balance which one of those things or which parts of those things do we think are really something we want versus the ones we want to drop. But if we decide now and then put it together later.
Yeah, so we'll have, we can either end, tonight's meeting and pick it up tomorrow again for that. But we are looking for, this evening and tomorrow for recommended changes if you'd like to bring something forward. So, but yes, you're right, we will have public comment again tomorrow, so. Any other? Anything else for this evening? Any other discussion or? Okay. Okay, well, I think that's it for this evening, so thank you.